the next place we went to, we knocked on the door, and you know how front doors sometimes have a frosted window?
Yeah.
So we knocked on the door, and a woman answers, and she sees Nick Shirley, and she's like, "You're Nick Shirley. Isn't it bad enough what you did in Minnesota?" And then she disappeared for 30 seconds, and we're still standing there, and she whip opens the front door, and she goes, I was naked. I could sue you. Why are you naked in a daycare center?
Amy Reichert, San Diego investigative journalist and founder of Reopen San Diego, recently focuses on exposing government corruption and local policy issues. She's the chairwoman of Restore San Diego and a licensed private investigator. That
That's right.
explains everything.
There you go.
At 95,000 Instagram followers. You ran for San Diego County Supervisor, District 4 in the 2023 special runoff election.
I was born in Philadelphia, and then I've lived in San Diego almost my entire life since I was 4 years old, and I was not politically active until 2020. And then, we kept hearing in 2020 how if you protested in a reopen type of protest, you were a super spreader, probably a conspiracy theorist. Well, I live in La Mesa, and in the middle of 2020, uh, 3 buildings were burned down during the riots there. And I had started questioning the lockdowns at that point, and I finally was able to get a hold of the chief medical officer for San Diego County, Eric McDonald, and he explained to me, "Oh, no, no, it's perfectly safe to riot and to protest." I don't think he used the word riot, but to protest.
Peaceful.
It's perfectly safe. It doesn't spread COVID. I was very taken aback. And other public health officials were saying that racism was more of a public health threat than COVID. And I'm like, wait a second. We've shut down the world. And so that's when I started getting politically involved and founded Reopen San Diego. Well, we wound up filing a federal lawsuit against the city of San Diego because the city council passed an ordinance saying that if you didn't get the COVID shot, you couldn't be a cop, you couldn't be a firefighter, and oh, by the way, you can't hold elected office ever. So I said, this is the hill we die on, and we filed the federal lawsuit, and we won. And we got that ordinance overturned, and we saved our cops and firefighters too. We were the only ones. San Diego was the only city in the entire state that saved their cops and firefighters. It didn't happen in LA. They got fired. Well, it's not just because of me. I had other co-founders with Reopen San Diego. We basically built like this little movement out of nowhere. Ever since I was a little girl, I always wanted to run for office. Political science was my major at San Diego State. That was the best decade of my life. Yes, I was on the 10-year plan. But in 2022, that's when the lines were redrawn, and I found myself in Nathan Fletcher's district. And Nathan Fletcher was the most powerful man, the heir apparent to Gavin Newsom in California. He was the most powerful man, I think, married to the most powerful woman, Lorena Gonzalez. And I just remember just kind of like chuckling with God, like, okay, you redistricted me for a reason. And so I ran, and I only had 10 months to run, and I was working full time. And in all fairness, it was a long shot, and I knew it. It was a Democrat plus 30 district. That means Democrats outnumber Republicans 2.5 times to 1.
Oh, boy.
And never in the history of ever has any Republican ever won in California in anything over a D plus 25. But I felt called, and I'm glad I ran in that race.
Nathan Fletcher, a well-known politician in San Diego, for those who are watching outside of the area, had some problems during that campaign and had to drop out, right? Did he drop out or get kicked out, or what happened with that?
I'll be honest with you. I prayed that he would drop out, that something would come out, because in my gut, I just felt like there was something wrong. So much so, I would walk 3 miles every day, rain or shine. And one day during my walk, I just stopped and I just started praying. And this is probably going to sound a little religious to people, but it's what came out of my mouth. And I'm like, God, if Nathan Fletcher is supposed to implode, please let it happen, before the election. I was joking with God. And I said, but you know what? If he does, I hope he repents and he turns to the Lord. And he did wind up imploding about 5 months afterwards. And I was really happy to hear that from people that were close to him that, during this time, he has actually been in Bible studies.
I hear through the grapevine that he's had a really strong turnaround for the good, for the
I
positive.
That's exactly what I
Yeah.
prayed for.
Yeah, it's always, you always love hearing, when there's a happy ending. But, but you didn't win that race, and so when you said you were working full time, that's private investigating?
So by that time, so I'm a woman of many trades. So I've been a licensed private investigator since 1999 in California. I actually worked in church ministry for 10 years, and after that, I was in marketing. And now, my gosh, my career, if you will, is social media.
You are making I look to Twitter just to find your stuff at first. You know what, when you really caught my attention? All right, let's just rewind. And it was fairly recently. I mean, you've been at this for a while. But I saw this is before you caught my attention one day. This newspaper comes across my desk, the Solana Beach Sun. Torrey Pines students stage walkout to oppose ICE actions. And I thought, what are they doing outside of school? Like, get back to class. What are you doing? Protest or do this on your own time. That's just kind of what crossed my mind. Then a little while later, I saw your Twitter where you said that the principal uh, was stepping down, and
So
the reason was what?
because of what I posted on social media. So what had happened was there were anti-ICE protests all throughout the county, all throughout the state, from high school students. And they were, and at Torrey Pines, they were holding up signs that said ICE equals KKK. And if you're an ICE agent, your mom is.
Oh boy.
Yes. These were signs that kids were carrying out of Torrey Pine School out into the streets. So one kid was very frustrated, and he was about 15 years old, and he had a piece of paper that said, "We heart ICE," and then like a little squiggly line that said, "Real Americans," and he put it up on the hallway. This was like a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. Okay. And he wound up being suspended for that. Now, he was wrong. He wasn't authorized. You have to be authorized to put up any kind of sign, even if it's only a piece of paper on the walls. But they literally said he was a threat to the school. Yes. And that he was using force of violence. So one of the things about my social media account is people will send me private messages. "Hi, I'm a mom of a student at Torrey Pines High School. He was suspended for this." And so at that point, they just wanted to be kept anonymous, but they wanted justice. And so I posted on my social media the "We Heart ICE" sign and just calling out the hypocrisy. Look, there were other signs at the school comparing ICE to KKK. There was in no way, shape, or form this kid was a threat to the school because he said "We heart ICE." So then my post went viral. That got the attention of fire.org. They are attorneys in Philadelphia. They're nationally known for defending people in free speech issues. And so I reached out to the parents and I said, "Hey, these attorneys want to help you for free." And so they did. They wound up getting the suspension overturned. And then within 8 days of my first post, the Torrey Pines High School principal wound up resigning. So, and now he's teaching at some alternative school in the district. So then the student decided that he was going to go public, and he was on Trace Gallagher's show. So I thought that was a really cool, just, I keep people anonymous and I try to expose things, especially that are going in our schools. But it was really cool to see that teenager on national news taking a stand. Yes, but I also have a target on my back. There was a podcast the other day, The Voice of San Diego, and Scott Lewis, the CEO, asked Sean Elo Rivera, who's a San Diego City Council member, who's worse, Carl DeMaio or Amy Reichert? And Sean Elo Rivera said Amy Reichert. And he said that I was dangerous and that I was racist. I've never said a racist thing in my life. I spent 2 days with Nick Shirley. here when he was in California, right here in San Diego, investigating ghost daycares. That made national news. But I was an honest broker when I investigated daycares here in San Diego County. I searched them alphabetically. I never focused on any race, religion, any ethnic group or national origin. And so I wound up taking Nick Shirley to what I called the dirty dozen. These were the worst of the worst. These were ghost daycares, as I called them. They showed patterns of having as many as 39 kids enrolled, but 0 kids present in the middle of the day and in the middle of the week. But they also had some really horrible health and safety code violations, type A violations. Things like not having a child roster, not having emergency contact information for parents, not having infant sleep logs, and multiple occasions of a learning center in City Heights who didn't have staff who had had criminal background checks on multiple occasions. So anyway, I believe as of right now, they're going to read my statement on the next podcast to set the record straight. But
Why don't they invite you on?
I was. So, and that was part of the reason Sean Ela Rivera was mad. He said that Amy Reichert should be deplatformed. So we have an elected official, a San Diego City Council member, saying that I should be deplatformed. He was mad because I was on their podcast. And apparently he wants to go full fascist and get me deplatformed off of X and Instagram and Facebook. So sorry, but no, that's not going to happen.
I think the social media companies learned their lesson with the cancellation movement, of a few years ago. They're not so quick to just cancel people anymore because somebody doesn't agree with somebody else, especially X. I mean,
It's better for business.
well, yeah, big time, big time. So that was like, okay, so you just touched on a couple of really big things. The San Diego Nick Shirley exposure. What came of that? Do we know what the latest is on any kind of investigating or where the money is? How much money? What do you know?
So what broke first was what happened in Minnesota. And remember, he had the Quality Leering Center.
Right.
So just a couple weeks ago, arrests were announced in those ghost daycares. I can tell you that after my work with Nick Shirley, First Assistant General Bill Asaley with the Department of Justice, he reposted Nick's video where we went and we looked at ghost daycares and he said, arrests are coming. So I know that's a question a lot of people ask. Oh, okay, yes, well, you did this video, blah, blah, blah. They got 100 million views, whatever. What's going to happen now? So that's all I can say is the feds.
Oh, they must be doing these investigations do take a minute. They really do. I mean, like when we can turn things and put them online or on TV but for them to make a case, it does take a second. So my initial instinct is like, what the heck? That was like, you did that like 3 months ago, 4 months ago. How long ago was that? Like what, what? Wait a minute. They've got to do their part. And if they just found out about it, or even if they didn't just find out about it, sometimes these things do take time, several months.
Let's face it, they're busy in California. It was just announced yesterday that Gavin Newsom is being investigated. The first assistant attorney general has also said that after the election is certified, that there will be arrests. He didn't say maybe there'll be arrests. He said there will be arrests within 1 to 2 months. So for the entire state of California, we just had a primary on
Right.
June 2nd,
Yeah.
and it takes 30 days for the state to, and by law, to certify the election. That's what First Assistant Bill Asaley, Attorney General Bill Asaley, has said. He actually said it on a couple podcasts. But the 2 days that I spent with Nick Shirley, it was really cool. So the very first day we met at an undisclosed location, and he had 3 security guards. And all 3 of them looked like they were straight out of central casting. They all looked like they were active military, not even like, retired. So I felt really comfortable. And also along with us was his mom. Oh, yes, Brooke. She actually has her own social media accounts too. So we went to different daycare centers, and one was called the Medina Learning Center. And when we showed up there, this is the one that had like the most violations, the ones that they had um, people who didn't have criminal background checks as their assistant director working there for months. But what was really interesting, the very first place we went to, their sign was misspelled.
Not again.
Yes, again.
What did it read?
It said Mad Dina Learning Center, which that's a problem because if you're a parent and you're going to put your kid there, the first, hopefully everybody knows that you can go to the Department of Social Services for childcare and you can research any daycare. That's where I got my information from. And you can see if they've had any violations. But if you don't know how to spell it, you're not going to be able to check. And this was a place that had supposedly 39 kids enrolled. And it was over and over and over. When the inspectors showed up, there were 3 kids or 4 kids. And it was very interesting. The next place we went to, we knocked on the door, and you know how front doors sometimes have a frosted window? So we knocked on the door, and a woman answers, and she sees Nick Shirley, and she's like, "You're Nick Shirley. Isn't it bad enough what you did in Minnesota? I'm naked. I could sue you." And then she disappeared for 30 seconds, and we're still standing there. And then she comes back, and she whip opens the front door, and she goes, I was naked. I could sue you. And then you know what I said next. Why are you naked in a daycare center? I wasn't naked. I wasn't naked. And then she changed her story. And then she whipped out her phone and she started filming us. And then she wound up putting that video immediately online like that day. And it went viral. And that's when you could read through the comments. And one of the things that stuck out to me, and I think about Nick Shirley, who's only 24 years old, right? And all he's doing is he's trying to expose fraud. And this one comment said that Nick Shirley should be Charlie Kirked and that his mom should play the part of Erica Kirk.
I mean, do you get people thanking you for your hard work?
100%. I'll never forget this. So I'd gotten like this horrible direct message saying that I should kill myself, right? And literally later on that day, I was at Fashion Valley and I was walking through Macy's, and out of nowhere, like one of the people who works at Macy's comes running over to me and just said, "Oh my gosh, you're Amy Reichert. Thank you so much for what you do. I just want to let you know that I'm just, really proud of you and everything that you do for San Diego." So yeah, I get that horrible stuff and the name calling, but honestly, like I'm almost used to it. Almost. So, I go back to standing in the middle of my kitchen, and it's like 2 weeks after 3 buildings were burned down in La Mesa. And I remember I wasn't vocal before then. I was in marketing and I didn't want to risk losing my job. And I was starting to feel depressed about what was going on in the world. We'd been locked down for so long. Buildings were being burned down in my neighborhood. We had National Guard in my neighborhood. We were under nightly curfew. And I just remember like just thinking to myself that if I continued to remain silent, I couldn't continue going on living a life of quiet desperation, and that it was going to be more painful to speak out, but I wanted to choose my pain. And so I've been using my voice ever since then. And one of the things that I've noticed, like not one local news station had me on to talk about my time with Nick Shirley. Not one.
It was right about that time. I'd been wanting to leave, the 9 to 5, well, 4 to 12:30, been doing morning shows for 30 years. It was enough. I was overtired, but it was right about that time, right about then when I was watching what was happening online and watching what was happening over the air.
2 different screens.
It's like they're not even in the same city.
Yes.
And they are. And I
Insane.
thought, this isn't right. I want to stay. Do you know the story that what I did as I'd been working very hard nobody has ever accused me of not being a hard worker. overtired, getting up in the middle of the night for 30 years to go to work, and this like longer hours as time goes on, and this, that, and the other. More, needed more at home, needed more at work, and all that. And one day I Googled how to be a stay-at-home mom, and but I forgot. I didn't look at what came up because I was too busy. And then about a week later, my son was like, "Hey mom," because he was looking at the Google history. "Hey mom, did you Google how to be a stay-at-home mom?" I was like hustling around the house. "Yeah, I did, but I didn't read what came up because I was too busy." And then I thought, right then, boom, palm to forehead. And it was right about the same time that you and Nick Shirley were doing the thing. And I was sitting in our post-show meeting, and I'm like, "Hey, there's this whole thing." And it was just, that's not, what we're doing tomorrow. And I'm not begrudging who I worked with for a minute. My coworkers are the best. They are the best. But
Oh,
it's not just,
absolutely.
if it's up to them, it's a whole machine. I mean, that's like a whole other story. But right
Well,
about that time, I was like, I think online is
it's where
got a
it's
lot.
at,
It's
and
a
you
lot
can
going on online.
what I love about being online is one thing that is so important to me is my voice and being able to use it. And I don't have to work for anybody else. I'm able to make, and I have a Substack, and
A living?
I make a living doing this. So I get ad revenue from X, from Instagram, and from Facebook. You,
Nice.
you got to get on social media.
No, I
I'm
am.
I'm
I
gonna I'm
am.
gonna
I
teach
do.
you.
Yes, I will be your student for sure. Like I am. But I have never see in over when you're over the air.
Mhm.
We have these contracts and all, and you can't monetize your social media
Oh no,
at all.
no, your social media is
Zero.
you. I mean, don't they even tell you like what kind of makeup you can wear in those
Yeah, and they make
contracts?
us buy it.
Yeah.
Oh, who does your hair and makeup? I was like, oh, I have a whole team. I have somebody who drives me to work, who does my weather forecasts for me, my graphics, my hair, my makeup, and clothes, and they pay for everything. And they're all right here. It's like, I mean, it's like a carnival act, where they're spinning the plates and they've got the arms out and the leg and this, that, and the other. And that's what it's like. Literally, I'm putting on makeup with, and hitting, run for a weather model and, doing this, that, and the other. I mean, it's a trip. It is a ball buster every day. We made it look easy, but it's
And I
hectic.
appreciate what you guys do because literally when I started speaking out during lockdowns about Reopen San Diego, there was only one news station that would let me be on. And really, that's how San Diego got to know me. So I'm really grateful for that.
Can I
But
take a guess on who it was? Was it KUSI?
it was.
Yeah, I think, I wonder why you weren't on all of the stations, and this is a frustration of mine, when I was still, I'll call it active duty.
Well,
When I was still active duty over the air. But I mean, this is obvious, like this, open up.
Well, I mean, it is a different audience on TV at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. It's an older audience, and that audience typically is not really on social media. And so I actually have good relationships with people in local news stations, producers, investigative reporters who call me like, "Oh, hey, I noticed that you posted this," or "Amy, can you refer somebody to me who knows that we can talk to a parent about this issue?" So I have given this advice to one particular news station. I'm like, look, the reason why the content that you're putting on social media is not hitting is because your audience is different. Your audience in San Diego, yes, Democrats outnumber Republicans for sure in San Diego, but the people who are commenting are more conservative. I'm like, you should consider having different pillars of content. And then another reporter at another station, when the Nick Shirley thing came up, uh, called me up and said, Amy, we're getting inundated at the station. They're asking, why aren't you doing Amy's story? We're getting social media, email, phone calls, and they were angry. And so this reporter was angry at me. And I'm like, look, I'm not telling anybody to call you. I haven't put you on blast. I'm sad that you guys haven't covered this story. It's had over 100 million views nationwide. But what he said really struck me. He said, we can't do what you do, Amy. We could get sued. And I said, I could get sued too. So, I think there is like this also they're because it's a machine, it's a corporation, and
What
it's got to protect itself.
what couldn't they do? Or what couldn't we do? I mean, you were just
They didn't want to touch the Nick Shirley thing with a 10-foot pole. I spent hundreds of hours searching public records. Yes. And then I was really fortunate because I was doing it alphabetical, like old school style. And fortunately, and I say it this way because they are way smarter than me. People way smarter than me who know how to use AI took the state's data and we were able to get through the information much quicker and more efficiently to find no kids present. Yes. But yeah, no news station covered that story. And then the San Diego Union Tribune, they did cover it. I made the front page uh, 2 times in 3 weeks, and they spent the bulk of the article quoting local officials, Democrat elected officials, saying that me and Nick Shirley committed a hate crime, that we targeted people of color, and that what we did was rooted in racism. You have no way of knowing what anybody's race is by looking at the records. So, and when we went to these places, it was literally the first time that I had been there or Nick Shirley had been there. So my mom, she's 83 years old and she doesn't like the president. And so she'll say, I just saw something and Donald Trump did this, you know? And, by the way, I do not agree with everything that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth. And I've used my social media to speak out against some of the things that he has said. By the way, I've lost followers over that because yes, this is my job. But again, what's more important than anything is my voice. So I think a lot of times, though, it really is the news source that people rely on. One of the things during the COVID lockdowns was I realized that we were that the news was being editorialized, even if it was just in a little way or just by omission, just by even the stories that aren't covered.
the the mosque shooting.
Well, yeah.
Tell me what you know about that. You really went deep on that one.
So I get goosebumps when I think about it. Because again, I get a lot of private messages on my social media, and it's sometimes from parents who are upset about the curriculum that their kids are being taught. Approximately a year ago, a parent of a student at Madison High School, and I remember her telling me about her son. He was a wrestler. By the way, I'm talking about uh, one of the shooters of the Islamic Center, the horrific slaughter of 3 innocent people at the Islamic Center. The mom had contacted me a year before it happened, and she wanted me to know that in San Diego Unified, they just passed a mandate saying that if, in order for a kid to graduate high school, they have to take an ethnic studies class. And she said they didn't mind that he had to take an ethnic studies class. And by the way, the person I'm talking about is Kane Clark. And I did not know the family's name. I promised to keep them anonymous, and I did post about it on social media. Kane Clark is half white and half Indonesian. And according to his mom, who's white, which she was telling me at the time, and by the way, at no time did she sound like a crazy person or a racist. She was coming to me because 2 weeks in to the ethnic studies course, she was learning what the curriculum was. It wasn't learning about different ethnicities. It was about whiteness. So, and that white privilege. So it was like 2 full weeks. And according to the mom, so I was interviewing the the future Islamic shooter through the mom. And what the son was telling his mom was that the ethnic studies course about white privilege made him feel less than because he wasn't 100% white. And then I know. And I'm quoting them. I'm not making any value judgments on the curriculum. That's up to anybody listening. And then the mom said one of her concerns was she was worried that the teachings about whiteness and white privilege would turn him against his white family members. Excuse me, his white family members. So, of course, him and another child, Caleb Vasquez, wound up murdering 3 innocent people at the Islamic Center. Early on, I did not put it together. I was hearing bits and pieces. Madison High School student who was doing online learning, wrestler, and I didn't even have her in my phone. And that's when I went searching through my messages, and I realized that I had been talking to the mom of the shooter, but a year before the shooting. I also did a reverse search on the phone number, and it was the address of where the student lived. But I also got a hold of the manifesto through law enforcement source. And then I also had law enforcement sources telling me that the Northwestern Division was understaffed, below their minimum staffing requirements by 7 officers. And the mom spent 90 minutes on the phone trying to get help
Before the shooting?
before
The
the
day
shooting.
of?
Yes. It wasn't, she was waiting for 90 minutes
On hold? Or, like, was
on
somebody
hold.
talking to her?
Nope.
Or
She didn't get to talk to anybody until 90 minutes because they were so understaffed. At that point, he was a runaway. I don't know exactly what was communicated early on. He stole their car and he took their guns.
but he wasn't even living there, was he? With the mom, he was living with his grandparents? Or what was the deal with that?
Um, as far as I know, the day of, he was with the mom.
Oh, what a devastating situation. From my understanding, the security guard in particular was a gem. It was just a beautiful guy, and those other 2 men that stood up for those kids, and, I mean, men like that make the world go round. They really do, and I'm just heartbroken that they're not with us anymore. I mean, what a travesty. Is it true that there was a video that they were videoing the shooters were videoing their shootout and then themselves in the car as well, or is that a rumor?
It's true, and I saw the video. They were videoing they live streamed the whole thing on a Signal chat group. And then
Oh, it wasn't public, okay.
the kids that were on the Signal chat group were discussing with each other whether they should call the police or not. They didn't.
Call the cops, like
And one girl on the Signal chat group decided to screen record the entire thing. And that is how we're able to see some of the live stream. And it's bad. Do not watch it. You cannot unsee what I've seen.
there's a lot of heavy stuff that goes on. Do you go to church every Sunday, or how are you with your faith? And what is your
Uh, Absolutely. So, part of my story is I was raised Jewish. I had a bat mitzvah, went to Hebrew school, the whole 9 yards, and then I became a Christian in my 30s. Yes. Yes. That's another long story, probably like an entire segment, but, uh, I did lose my first child, and it really made me, wrestle with God. What's the meaning of suffering? And, after a very, difficult time, um, losing a child is just one of the worst things that you can possibly go through. That's when I gave my heart to Jesus. And I was one of those new believers. I knew what I believed, but I really wanted to know what I knew I believed. And so I really threw myself into it. And next thing I knew, I found myself on staff at a church. And then I went to seminary. And I graduated with my master's in divinity. And no, it didn't take me 10 years this time. So, and I wound up becoming a licensed minister through Eastlake Church, which is in the South Bay. So, that's my faith is the reason why I do all this. I literally feel called to do it. Like I feel like this is one of my purposes. And when you're living with a purpose in your life, it just adds fuel to your life. In 2020, I was 50 pounds heavier than I am right now. I was pretty much asleep. Like life was pretty vanilla. I would see like a beautiful San Diego sunrise and I'd take a picture of it, post it on my private Facebook and go, "Oh, what a beautiful sunrise." And I was afraid to say and what I really thought, because I didn't want people to unfriend me or I didn't want to risk my job. And so, yeah, my faith is actually everything why I do what I do.
How did you lose 50 pounds?
You know what? Honestly, I think it was because I found a sense of purpose. There was something that was posted online that was very scary. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, I need to get in shape. But I had already started eating better. And then combined with, then I started like walking like every day, 3 miles a day. And it was transformative.
Did I see today that you have an editorial that was posted in the San Diego Union Tribune? Is that what you said? I just glanced at it, but it was there an op-ed that was published today or something?
Oh no, I've been deplatformed from the San Diego Union Tribune. After I worked with Nick Shirley, a bunch of reporters stormed into the managing editor's office and demanded that I be deplatformed. But before that, I was writing regularly for the San Diego Union Tribune. But today, I actually went out to Fuerte Elementary, which is in Mount Helix. A whistleblower mom sent me information. There's 9 brave teachers at Fuerte who are speaking up about mold, mildew, cockroaches, and rat infestations at Fuerte. And so I went out there, stood in front of the school, and I did a selfie video. And I talked about the conditions of the school, showed pictures of the mold. So one of the things that's super important is you want to make sure that you don't get sued, right? So that's a huge concern because people can sue you for any reason. And so I do use AI. I'm like, hey, I want to say this. Is this safe? And then AI will tell me, oh, you know what? You know what, Amy? Maybe say it this way instead, just to be on the legally safe side. So I don't have a peer review. And there's a downside to that,
Well,
obviously.
but peer review was a thing before AI came into the
Yeah.
mix. I mean, that's kind of a bad idea if you don't
Yeah.
have anybody else to bounce it off of. And, people are just people. You could have somebody else take a look at it and say, oh, it looks good to me. And, it's nice to have a couple of options.
And I do have friends and confidants. For example, I went to the San Diego Registrar of Voters on Friday and I bought the entire voter file, 2.2 million voters. So, I do have a press pass through the San Diego Police Department. So I was able to get that information. And I also have to abide by all of these privacy laws about that information. But I went through it with AI and I posted about it today. And I did have somebody peer review that, again, abiding by all privacy laws. And what we both agreed was we could not find any big fraud indicators in the voter registration in San Diego County. There was one thing that was weird. In the 2024 election, there were 313 voters over the age of 105 that were registered, and 43% of them voted. And we did actually remove placeholder dates because the registrar of voters uses 01/01/1900 sometimes for a voter if they don't have a date of birth, which is weird enough. I don't like that either, that we don't have dates of birth. And the fact is that you can register to vote in California without a driver's license or without a social security number, and you can use a gym card from Planet Fitness or a prescription. So I don't like that. But because I did have somebody who I trust, I'm not just going to go off half cocked and just go, oh, I've found major fraud in our voter rolls. No, I had the guidance of this person just going, no, there's no major fraud indicators.
That's so great.
Mm-hmm. And
That
then
is so great. That is breaking news. Neon sign. No fraud detected. Sweet.
yes, so that is great news. Now, the caveat is the data was only good up to 2 weeks before the election. So I do want to get additional data from that last 2 weeks because that's really the bulk of when people vote. So I do want that data. I'll go back and get it after the election is certified.
Yeah, no, the mail-ins can be well after the election day. I mean, yeah, it's not just the 2
7
weeks before.
days.
Yeah, that's where it really
Yes.
gets dicey.
So, and in some cases, a handwritten date on an envelope it can be used in lieu of a postmark. And then one of the really troubling things that I see as an investigator is if you look at the back of the envelope that we all send in for our votes, it says in the fine print where you're supposed to put your signature. If you are unable to sign, just put X marks the spot and have a witness sign. Well, nobody's verifying the witness signature. You could just put a scribbly line. So I think that's problematic. But yes, as of right now, and I do want to reserve the possibility that after I look at the 2 weeks before the election, also I want to get my hands on inactive voters. Inactive voters weren't included in that file. These are people that haven't voted in a couple election cycles, but they still receive a ballot. So I want to take a look at that. So
Right.
the investigation continues, but as of right now, I've not been able to find fraud in our voter rolls in San Diego County.
That's great news.
Yes, it is.
That is amazing. Your most memorable moment, whether it was private investigating or just investigating fraud or independent, would you consider yourself an independent journalist? Is that the lead to your story, or is private investigator the lead to your which is which? Do you think, or neither?
I'd say I'm both at the same time. Just kind of like I was still a private investigator even when I was a licensed minister.
Mm.
You never let some things go. Now I am paid for freelance work that I do. I do write for IW Features, for example. I submit pieces there. Um, so there's the journalism thing, but I'm also, yeah, a licensed investigator. I think one of the most memorable things is actually a personal story. And I was adopted when I was a baby. And when you're adopted, the adoption laws, you're never allowed to find out your biological parents' names. In fact, the record is like blacked out and whited out. And this is what I was told. And you can't even petition the court unless there's some extraordinary reason. And I always wanted to know. So when I was 25 years old, my mom, who adopted me and who I consider my mom, called her on the way up here actually to
Okay.
your
Your
podcast,
83-year-old mom.
my 83-year-old Jewish mom. And she told me when I was 25, Amy, I have something to tell you. When you were about a year old, the attorney handling your adoption accidentally sent us a letter that was meant for your biological mother. And I know your mother's real name. And so this is before Google. And so
Oh
I
my
started
God.
looking for her using DMV records, trying to use property records. I mean, I had no idea what state she would be in. Well, it turns out she was still in Philadelphia. And so I was able to find her. And yeah, I was able later to also find my biological father too. So that's my favorite story. And it's reason I became a private investigator because I was like, I think I have a knack for this.
No,
I've
but
been called a pit bull that
um,
won't let go. Yes.
uh, eh, you reached out to the biological mom and dad?
Hmm.
Did that work out? I mean, how did that go? I
So
mean, because you
yes and
never
no.
know.
So again, I was like 25 years old. I was living in Mission Beach, and and how I found her, by the way, was I had sent her a letter and she had not responded, and then my boyfriend at the time sent a letter but requested a signature verification, and when we got it back. I looked up property records and I realized that was her landlord. So I called her landlord and told her the story. And she said, here you go. Here's her phone number. Because her phone number was unlisted. I'll never forget. I was like sitting in my apartment and I'd been waiting my whole life to call my biological mother. And I pick up the phone and I dial. It was probably rotary. It was that long ago,
Yes.
right? Longest. Yeah. And, she picked up the phone and I told her, who I was. And she started crying and she hung up. And I was like, we must have gotten disconnected. And so called her back, and she started crying, and then she hung up again. Well, at that point, I knew that she hung up on me on purpose, but I'm pretty persistent, as you probably have gathered from this podcast of yours. So I called back a third time, but this time a man answered. And he had like this really like gravelly kind of voice. And he's like, Ula, are you calling? And I said, well, I'm her daughter. And then he said, don't you ever call here again. And then he hung up on me. And I've never met my biological mother. And so that left like this other unanswered question, like, what happened? What would make her react that way? And I realize I've never given up a child for adoption. And so I'm not trying to diminish her pain and her life experience. But I was really curious about my biological father, but I didn't have his name, right? So I requested my hospital records. He wasn't on my hospital records. I reached out to the adoption agency and they said, we'll do a search on your behalf. And I'm like, I'm a private investigator. I can find him in 2 minutes. Just give me his name. We can't. It's the law. So at the time I gave them $500 and they couldn't find him. And so I just let it rest for several years. And then I just realized, I'm like, you know what? I need to find my biological father. So I called the adoption agency and I said, this time I'm not paying you guys anything. You're going to look for him. And they found him within a couple days and they sent him a letter and he wound up responding and he flew out to see me. He lived in Georgia. He flew out to see me in California 3 weeks later, and I got to meet my biological father. And it turned out I looked exactly like him. It was wild. No DNA test needed. But we did do ancestry DNA, and sure enough, yes. But
What
yeah,
was he like? I mean, was he happy to see? I mean, obviously, he was happy to see you.
he was. And he had his own son who was also my half brother. Sadly, my half brother though died during the COVID lockdowns. He had collapsed in a grocery store like April 2020 from a heart attack. I never got to meet him in person. But, I wasn't seeking a father-daughter relationship, and I don't think he was seeking a father-daughter relationship either. We were strangers meeting after I didn't meet him until I was in my 50s. My 50s. So, but I was really glad that I had some answers. I was a love child. They were both in the Army in the 1960s.
Oh,
And I had some really cool moments with my biological father after we reconnected. There was one instance. So he had gone to a wedding, apparently, before he got the letter. And he was brokenhearted because his longtime wife, who had passed away, and she had had Alzheimer's for many years, he
oh.
was her caretaker. So he goes up to the pastor after the wedding and he's like, I don't know why I'm here. Why am I still here? I mean, he was just so brokenhearted. And then he came home and there was the letter. And then he was like, this is why I'm still here. And then he had heart, no, it gets better. It gets better.
Oh,
He had heart problems. And so,
oh my gosh.
he had a pacemaker, right? And, his heartbeat was irregular and his doctor was really concerned about him and was watching him. And then he went in for his doctor visit and he's like, oh, whoa, your heartbeat is back to normal. And like, he was able to look at the data to the exact date when his heart started beating normally again. And it was when I went to go visit him in Georgia with my family. I am 58 years old and I have a 15-year-old. What I tell people is, I was 43 when I gave birth to him. And my biological clock wasn't just ticking, it was gonging. I slid into home plate. So I have to keep myself up as a 58-year-old of a child that is 15. I don't want people saying, oh, are you his grandma at high school graduation? No, I'm his mom.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't have thought. Yeah, no, you look a lot younger than that.
Thank you.
Well, I guess we should wrap it up here.
People can find me at Amy for San Diego on X, Facebook, and Instagram, and we'll see what happens next.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.